Thank you. Hi everyone, how's it going? Hope everyone's having a fantastic start to India Blockchain Week. We're the last panel of the day for this stage, and we're going to be talking about GTM strategies. We have a fantastic lineup over here, but before we get started, how many of you are marketers? Just so that I can read the room and understand. Okay, yes, nice. Front row, all marketers, fantastic. So we're going to be talking about what a successful GTM strategy looks like, what a terrible GTM strategy could potentially look like, and what are the building blocks of a successful one. Do we want to do a quick round of intros and what our markets specifically look like, just so that the audience has more context, starting
Yes.
with...
Kashvi, firstly, I think it's pretty funny that we're the last panel talking about GTM because it's also the last thing teams focus on when they're building something in crypto. Anyway, I'm Rachit. I lead global expansion at the Wormhole Foundation. Wormhole is essentially an interoperability protocol. You know, we work with some of the biggest institutions in the space like BlackRock, Apollo, Van Eck, Janus Henderson. We also work with some of the biggest DeFi protocols in the space, you know, like Uniswap, for example. What global expansion essentially means is I focus a lot on the non-English speaking communities at Wormhole. So we have India, of course, we have Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, Japan. We do a lot of stuff in LATAM. So that's what I focus on, and that's what my team focuses on.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kunal. I head marketing at HeyElsaAI. HeyElsaAI is a DeFi AI platform. You can think of us as a chat GPT for crypto. We enable users across the globe to onboard to crypto. They can interact with Elsa in their native tongue, even speak to Elsa in their native tongue. And yeah, I mean, as Rachit mentioned, this is the last panel and pretty telling about the GTM standards that exist. But yeah, good to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Kunal.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashwath. I run the advisory and consulting business for Delphi Digital. If you don't know Delphi, we do a little bit of everything. We're a venture capital fund. We have an incubator, accelerator. We're one of the first and biggest research firms in the space, and more recently also an advisory firm. A big part of what I focus on through the advisory side is actually helping our clients with narrative building and just like building an overall GTM strat that fits what their vision, I guess.
Ashwath, I'd actually love to kick
Kashvi,
off.
introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kashvi. I lead marketing for a ZK protocol called Boundless, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Rachit. Ashwath, I'd actually love to start with you and talk a little bit about what success looks like for these projects. Traditionally, it's always been attention, mindshare, liquidity. One of the fundamentals that I have is that attention goes where liquidity flows, but for a lot of people, it's like liquidity flows where attention goes. So where are you on that par, and what is more important than the other?
I think it's just a reflexive cycle. And so liquidity breeds attention, attention breeds liquidity. There is no starting point, there is no end point. And so you can kind of pick up with your strategy from anywhere across that circle. You can either start with, I'm going to build attention, and it comes to my product, and that's going to bring users and liquidity. Or you can start with the liquidity piece, which is going to incentivize people to put capital in the system, and that's going to breed attention, and it kicks off, what people call a flywheel, or it's just basically a feedback loop between the two. There is no, you can't say definitively that there is a starting point and it starts with attention or it starts with liquidity, but 100%, like those are two of the most important factors in the, the overarching goal of user acquisition.
One often exists without the other in crypto. There are projects who have a lot of attention but not enough liquidity, a lot of liquidity but they're probably not famous on crypto Twitter. On what side do companies need to be depending on where they're at, and how is that a consequence of the GTM strategy? How do you optimize your strategy for it?
Well, look, I think GTM, marketing, all of these things only work around a successful product. And so if you're prioritizing attention over liquidity and user acquisition, you've already sort of lost. There is no substitute for building a product that people want to use. No amount of marketing, no amount of GTM strategization is going to overcome a product deficit. And so as a founder or as a team actively trying to build, you want to chase what your North Star metric is for users rather than optimizing for attention. Because what attention does, especially around TGEs, is put a pump on the token, which is good until it stops. And then you've basically like run out of bullets. You have an empty chamber in your gun, and you have nothing that you can do to, like bring more of that attention to your ecosystem. And crypto is pretty unforgiving in the sense that
It is.
once you have attention, if you do something when you're in the limelight that causes people to hate you, it's pretty much over.
An interesting thing that you said is North Star for users. So Kunal, I'd love to throw it to you. What is your North Star for users at HeyElsa, and how did you approach your GTM strategy when you were going to market?
For us, from day one, the North Star metric has been, okay, how much volume we are doing, because what we are building is pretty novel. It is like something where we are trying to experiment with a newer narrative where you can put a prompt and transaction gets like rendered on the screen. Some people say, oh, this is like you're trying to do it like, trying to add another level to the complexity that already exists. But at the same time, what we are seeing is for simple tasks like swaps and all, it is fine for users. But for a bit more complicated stuff, they actually like using ELSA, like bridge, then like perps, multi-swap. So for us, like from day one, it is always been about volume. And I've seen that growth happening. On day one, when I joined ELSA a year back, we used to do around $1,000 a day. Now we do around 4 million a day. And then we try to sort of, we have a extensive redash boards around this, which tells me about each transaction, what is the value of each transaction, what are the actions users are doing, and that is how we track it every day. So our Dune is the holy grail for us, and that is where we understand two things: one, volume; second, DAU; and third, important metrics for us is what is the most used chain on ELSA.
Okay.
As of now, it is base, but yeah, that also tells us, okay, what is the GTM we need to go after?
Interesting. I think the biggest marketing buzzword of 2025 has been mindshare. And I think it's very interesting that you listed out all your metrics of success and mindshare wasn't one of them. Rachit, I wonder at Wormhole, is mindshare something that you guys measure, or is it more similar to HeyElsa, where you look at the volume, the daily active users, and the ecosystems?
Is it okay if I talk about Ashwath's point to just build up on
Yes.
it? Okay. So in terms of like attention and liquidity, we've seen all these pre-deposit campaigns, and a lot of ecosystems have done that. Recently with the Monad launch, you saw, it was a pretty controversial take. Like even when we were talking to the Monad team, we told them that, hey, this is something that we can do. And as an interoperability provider, you would want liquidity to flow into the ecosystem before it even starts. Abdul posted, Abdul, who's the head of DeFi at Monad, he posted a pretty long thread about this, where they want to focus, Monad obviously is one of the most hyped launches that we've seen this cycle. They have amazing community, and they've done pretty well last week in terms of how the community has reacted to the ecosystem. They've been focusing a lot more on useful liquidity. They wanted to build an ecosystem and then have liquidity flow into it, rather than having liquidity as a metric where, if you have like $2 billion of liquidity, that brings attention. So I thought that was an interesting case study. There's no right or wrong answers here in terms of liquidity first or attention first, but we have all these case studies, and as a team, you should focus on what makes sense for you and the way that you want to move forward and how you utilize that, essentially. In terms of what we track at Wormhole, we've done a lot of facelifts to Portal, which is our dedicated front end. Portal is now Wormhole Portal, and it's a lot more closer to the Wormhole brand. The metrics that we track on a very regular basis are daily volume, or like weekly volume, and then users. What you'll see is, you'll see a surge of users when there's something interesting happening in different ecosystems, but the volume stays pretty consistent because 90% of the Wormhole volume comes from like bigger wallet or like whales, for instance. So we keep a track of that. The way that marketing functions as a result of that, let's say there's a lot of inflow into the Sui ecosystem, then you'll see a lot of reactive posting or proximity posting from the Wormhole main account talking about Sui. Or, we'll do a lot of ecosystem highlights in Sui because that's where liquidity is flowing into. So I would say it's a lot more reactive. Mindshare is not something that we track pretty actively. We track on-chain metrics in terms of usage.
Very interesting. Every metric that you guys have listed has a driver, and that driver has a trigger. So internally as marketers, what are the activities and things that you guys do on a daily or weekly basis to drive the volume and to retain those daily active users? What is your strategy for that internally?
So, as I said, if there's a lot of inflows into SWE, for example, the thing you can do as a marketer is you can either, you can do a lot of proximity posting about SWE. You should talk about things to do in the SWE ecosystem. We work with a lot of SWE teams.
Break it down granularly for us.
Okay,
On
so
what channels are you
let's
doing
say-
this?
Okay,
Who is it
we
catered
mainly
to?
focus on Twitter. Something that we realized is Twitter is where most of these crypto native users are, and that's where they're following and getting signal from. One thing that our account is not, it's not a signal channel. That comes from trading groups and all those different things. But what we focus on a lot more on is we call it proximity posting. You post about what people want to see. Like, for example, when Chinese meme coin season was happening on BNB, we talked a lot about the BNB ecosystem and we heavily indexed into that, for instance. So pick your patterns, pick what metrics work, and then look at engagement, how it flows. Another great example for this was, the past few weeks or 10 days have been all about Monad, right? So your marketing strategy is derived from what launches are coming, what your biggest partners are, and how you want to cater to them. The other things you could do is, we do a lot of events with the Monad team. You want to be visible wherever your partners are. So for us as an infra provider or as a front end, where we want people to use, if we want people to bridge into the Monad ecosystem, we want to be associated with Monad, right? So, we promote monadbridge.com, for instance, which is like the dedicated front end for...
And sorry to cut you off, but who do you want this association to be created? Like, in whose head do you want this association to be created?
Anyone attending the Monad event is relevant for us because they're thinking about coming into the Monad ecosystem or they're already in the Monad ecosystem. The highest chance for success you'll have in terms of GTM, like GTM at the end of the day is a way to gain users or gain whatever metric you're coming towards, right? So if we're thinking about crypto Twitter as the place where most crypto natives are, we're spending a lot of time there, so it makes sense for us to be at events where there are crypto native people who are interested in Monad, SWE, Base, or whichever ecosystem we're focusing on for the time being.
Makes sense. Kunal, what about you?
Oh yeah, I mean for us, I think we experimented a lot to an extent where we went unhinged sometimes, we went experimenting with communities, and what I understood out of it is the close-knit community, you want to understand who are the bigger participants on your ecosystem, and you want to nurture them to an extent where you take their feedback on day-to-day basis. And that has helped us to get enough volume for us to understand where the product is faltering or where the product is better. And since it is a DeFi AI platform, we try to tune it in a way where whatever newer AI advancement that is happening in the space, we are the first one to integrate it in some shape or form and comment on it in some shape or form. For an example, X402, I mean, we are the first one to do as a DeFi AI product to actually build something on it. We just simply put out the screenshots. And second thing that we do a lot is like, we know that this is the ecosystem we want to align with. We have groups with them. And as a ritual, we keep on sharing something every day with them, telling them this is what we've been building. And they then give us amplification needed, give us support needed. This is on the ecosystem side. On the user side, I think Discord is my holy grail. I spend most of my time on Discord because that is where I can have a one-on-one conversation. It is a bit hectic, like you need to spend like 8 hours a day. But for a product like us, where users matter a lot, I want that becomes my retention strategy in a way. So that has helped us a lot in the shorter run. And in the long run, I think in having complicated DeFi strategies embedded into the product helps us a lot. We do tons of demos with our community where we want them to understand, if you want to do this, this is how you should do it. So these are like very tactical things that have helped us a lot.
That's awesome. That's exactly the granularity that I was looking for to give to our audience, since we have so many marketers in the chat. Ashwath, what's your hot take on these distribution channels? What do you think actually works for projects that you're advising, and what doesn't work? Because I feel like things like crypto Twitter often have the illusion, they create an illusion of working. But I'd like to hear your hot take on this.
No, it's very easy to create the illusion of your product working, especially when you add incentives to the mix. It's very easy to throw money at potential users and then say, I have 10,000 DAOs, I have 20,000 DAOs. At the end of the day, what actually matters is like building an organic community. People who are actually using the product, because like I think as Kunal said, unless people come in and use the thing, you have no idea where your product lacks. And you cannot kick off your iteration cycles without actually knowing how people feel about your product. If they're using it in a purely inorganic way, which is if you're simply paying all of your users to use the product, you do not have that genuine user who is, you know, like actually trying to use this to solve a specific pain point. And so you do not get the kind of product feedback you need to actually turn this into something that is compelling. I do think Telegram, Discord, and Twitter are like the main sources of distribution for any project in crypto. And that's because the primary relevant audience sits there. As you start to see products in like, you know, like the remittance payment space come out, and as you know, like have these neobanks, it becomes really important to start to branch out. That's where, you know, an understanding of how distribution and marketing works in Web 2 and the more conventional side of technology becomes really important. So phase one is to focus on your crypto natives, Twitter, Discord, and Telegram. And then phase two is largely TBD for most of the industry, because only a handful of companies have really been successful in evangelizing, you know, non-crypto users.
Interesting. Rachit, do you have something to add?
No, I think
Okay,
that's fine.
I thought you raised your mic. So there's two very interesting things that Ashwath said. One is retention and the other is incentives. And we're going to come back to that. But before that, I have a fun question for you guys. When in the last 1 year have you been successfully GTM'd by another crypto protocol? So you saw their strategy, you saw their communication, you used their product, and you thought, hey, this was a good GTM strategy, because I think it will be helpful for us to share case studies of what worked on us as marketers, because that's where we essentially take notes from and build our own playbooks. So Ashwath, let's start with you and then...
Yeah, this is maybe not very relevant. I think it's relevant for everyone, but it's not directly marketing related. I think for me, the best GTM we have seen in the last 2 years in crypto was Hyperliquid, and I think it's difficult to argue with that. The reason it's the best GTM is because they didn't give a shit about their GTM. They just took like an incredible product to market. They had some light incentives in the form of, you know, like points, and then the token went live and it ripped. And all of that boiled down to the fact that Jeff and the rest of his team operated with more integrity and transparency than possibly anyone else in the entire industry. And so the biggest takeaway from me is that token markets have evolved. And like, you know, the crypto market at large has very much evolved. You know, the market is not as stupid as it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And the index on transparency and on integrity is extremely high. So my biggest takeaway was basically telling all of our clients, if you can, I don't want to say emulate Jeff, but if you can bring the same degree of integrity and transparency that he did to his product, to your product, people will, you know, like very obviously be driven to you, because you'll stand out in an industry that is full of some questionable people.
The best marketing strategy is a product that just works. Kunal.
Oh, for me it is a crypto startup from Bangalore itself, Noise. I just, can you swear here? No? Okay.
You can. It's if I'm moderating, it's allowed.
Yeah, I just freaking love that team because they did 3 things pretty well. Like find out a initial acquisition funnel, which was for them forecaster, create a product that most of the people will love using, and third is the founder-led marketing was so to the point, and you know, they don't have any marketeers there. I mean, the founder himself is a marketeer. And I think that is one product I eventually became their NCMO. Like, you know, I asking everyone to just go and use Noise. So that is one product I liked a lot because all these factors and the way they kept on building on top of that. And one point when they realized, okay, this meta has run out of its course, they moved on to something which is still related to what they built, but then a bit more enhanced version of it, which is Oracle, is what they're building. So I love these sort of grounded teams. Like they build something which is very, very useful to the ecosystem and know that at what point to stop and pivot to something which would become a sustainable startup at the end of the day. They were so transparent in their comms that they talked about, if I want to run this sustainably, I need to sell my tokens as well. And when they sold those tokens, community was okay with it because the story was there in a way. So yeah, Noise is what I would say. And if you haven't heard of them, go find out about Noise. Oracle is another product by them, yep.
That's a great one. I'm a big fan of the founders as well. Rachit.
I think this is an interesting question. So both of the examples that Ashwath and Kunal mentioned were all like founder-led GTM strategies, right? I think a lot of us forget that meme coin cycle was also this year. You know, as I would assume Ashwath and Kunal also, like I have this habit of trying everything. Like I want to test out every crypto application. I feel like if you're in the crypto space for a long time, you need to have that touch and feel of how different products feel. So I feel like in terms of GTM, I've been GTM'd by a lot of different products just to try them out. But one product that I eventually ended up using a lot was Photon. You know, like I saw Frank Degorge doing a live stream and he was just aping tickers. That was when I was actually like, okay, I need, if I want edge in this market, I need to use Photon. That's where I didn't want to try it. I just wanted to use it to, you know, ape into random stuff. That's a different type of GTM strategy. That's like more word of mouth. I don't know if Frank Degorge was associated with the Photon team. But I would say that's one where I used the product for a very long time because I genuinely wanted to, and then, you know, it just happened.
That's awesome. I think a common denominator in hype and noise is that it's fun, and Photon just works, again, which we keep going back to that. Guys, if you have a product that just works, GTM becomes a much easier job to do, I guess. I do want to talk a little bit more about Wormhole's global expansion and how you guys have done it, because I think it's one of the most successful strategies that I've seen in a while. Every time I post something even remotely related to Wormhole, I have like 15 replies to that post with W's in the chat. So please tell us what your secret sauce is with global GTM and what your first point of contact is when you're cold starting in a new region.
Yeah, I think there are two aspects of this conversation. You know, there's India GTM. Because I'm Indian, it's a lot easier for me to understand this market. So we'll talk about India GTM after. Let's talk about like Korea or China or Indonesia. The number one thing that you should do, you know, okay, so one of my hot takes is that teams should invest into global strategies post-TG. Pre-TG, you already have a lot going on. You should just focus on the TG event, focus on product market fit. All this stuff happens when you have a product that people want to use, and then you double down on areas where, okay, pre-TG, we saw a lot of traction from India and Vietnam. Let's go out there and let's try to get those users back after the incentives dry out, as Ashwath mentioned. So anywhere in Korea, Vietnam, Japan, anywhere, you'll find a lot of agencies that work at a pretty high level. They work with a lot of different protocols already. The secret sauce is to start working with an agency. All right, I know that's something that crypto Twitter hates, you know, marketing agencies, and there's been a lot of FUD around that. I used to work at a crypto agency, a marketing agency myself as well, so I know. I'm pretty sure Ashwath knows the other side of that as well, where he's recommending agencies to teams. But you start off with an agency, you try to understand what your core user group is with that agency. They're like experts within that region. They've been doing it for all the other teams. Understand who the KOLs are, understand where the users live. So for Korea, the only region to focus on is Seoul. The only way you would figure that out is that if you either just go to Seoul or you work with an agency that just functions in that region, right? And then after that, ideally what you would want is you want to find a team that evangelizes for you within that region. So for Korea, we have this team called PolyQuest. They're like a prediction market on Solana. They run all of our on-ground events. They run a lot of our meetups and everything. So we don't have like a Korea lead dedicatedly. We have a team that we incentivize and we give them funds to do different things. It helps them acquire a lot of users, and then it also helps Wormhole as a, you know, as a ricochet effect, you can say. This works for every region that we've done, and this is like the most organic way to do it. For India, it was a little different because I understood this region a lot better. One thing that you can do, which Base does really well, is you can go to each region and you can hire heads. You know, I don't think Base has worked with a marketing agency in a while. The way that we did India GTM was different because me, Smith, and Nilavo, all three of our global expansion team, are all Indians, right? So we understood how, like, we've gone to college here. We understood how colleges work. We understood how hackathons worked. You know, there's no shame in saying, but the Wormhole team before we joined had burned a lot of money sponsoring hackathons, which gave zero incentives. So the team was really reserved about investing into India. One thing that I do want to shout out, there's this awesome group of people or college students out of Nagpur called the Bhai Saab community. So the story here is Smith actually went to IIIT Nagpur and he spent time with these guys in person. That resulted in like a community of 70 people. They call themselves Bhai Saab. I've been telling them to sort of, like feminize it a little bit and be more open to that. But okay, for the context of this conversation, Bhai Saab was like a 70-member team or like a community, and they actively evangelize for Wormhole wherever they go. Like 10 other fellows are here as well. We throw fellow-specific events. The number one thing that people in India want, especially college students, is they want you to come and spend time with them.
What's in it for them? How do you drive this behavior? What incentives do you use?
So I think the way that the Indian market works is a little different from how the Korean market works and the Vietnamese market works. In India, a lot of the people or the people who are coming out of colleges, like me myself, like I'm a prime example for this. I got into the crypto space when the Polygon team came to my campus. They did a workshop and that's how I got into crypto. They were my first point of contact and I'm forever grateful. Like whenever I see Sandeep, I'm like, sir, thank you so much. Like you've given me this career path. This is all because of you, right? I think a lot of college students function in the same way where they want to build careers and they want people to help them out to build those careers. So if you're trying to do India GTM, focus a lot more on that aspect. If you look at all the base India messaging, they also focus on a lot of this stuff as well. And I think it's going pretty well. One thing that I'll note out here, Kashvi, is that all of our fellows have now become active users of Portal. They've all involved in like feedback processes for Portal as well. So there's like a lagging impact, which teams try to prioritize first. I think it should be the other way around.
Very interesting. Ashwath, I want to throw this back to you. And is this strategy something that you advise to your portfolio companies as well, or?
So we're not a marketing agency. We don't handle.
No, Ashwath, I mean, you recommend marketing agencies. That's what I said. Like you would recommend marketing agencies to your clients. Oh.
I meant like I don't have strong opinions in terms of how you go about with execution. I think like what we focus on is mostly on the, let's say, like product evangelization side, narrative building, and just helping build the right comms, the right storyline that helps people connect to a specific product. And so it's less about geography and it's more of a global thing that we specifically focus on. So I don't have strong thoughts on like the geographical differences between how you GTM.
That's very interesting. So you don't find yourself tailoring your product comms to the geography of where the users are?
Yeah, the thing is like it's different on the ground in every country. And we're not going to delude ourselves into thinking that, because we understand crypto, we understand how things work in Korea and in Japan and in the UAE and in India. So we stick to what we know how to do, which is talk to people in crypto, whether that's your smaller retail investors, whether that's your billion-dollar funds like A16Z and Multicoin. Like that's what we specialize in, is sort of building the right narrative that like strikes a chord with people like this.
Interesting. Kunal, what about you guys? Is localization a focus for you, or is it not something that's critical?
It matters a lot for us because on ELSA you can actually do prompts in your own native tongue. And I mean, I agree to Rachit's point that localization is post-TG, but in our case, it is pre-TG as well. We've been doing tons of activations in Korea, Japan, China, because we want them to understand that, okay, this is the interface where you can type in your own language and do interactions. And interestingly, we actually got our regional communities on Discord, and they are hyperactive. And surprisingly, they are the one who would give me the most granular feedback I would ever get. So then I started realizing, okay, we need to nurture these communities more, and we started incentivizing a bit just to make them understand, and they become your vocal supporter. I mean, in InfoFi, it is still like you want to incentivize the top layer of it, but these folks, if you talk to them nicely, ask them how do you use the product, they become your loyal supporter for all day long. And I think that is a strategy which is not scalable, but has worked pretty well for us. Like, you focus on these communities, these languages, and on the comms, you make sure that you give them enough importance around, okay, you matter. I think most of the most of the crypto tussle or like, that buffer comes in when you not respect regional communities enough. And what we realized is if you respect regional communities enough, they will become your vocal supporter and they will bring in the volume.
Interesting.
And in our case, most of our volume actually comes from places which you would never imagine. And these folks are one who will always defend us. Recently, someone started like there was a coordinated attack. I'm okay to talk about it on ELSA, like since it is an Indian team, they are going to do whatever. And we had to put out something in our defense. But these were the folks who came into our defense than anyone else. They started taking all these folks heads on. So I think if you are someone who is building a product, focus on regional communities, and that is what Base did pretty well as well. I mean, I've been a part of FBI from day zero, and we always wanted, of course, we are India Maxi, so we wanted to see that community nurtured here, and we think that there is tons of talent who can get converted into a startup which are venture backable. So I think, yeah, regional communities matter, and I think eventually it will become it will become so critical that you can't think of it as a post-EG activity. You need to think of it as a day one activity.
That's almost how we've looked at it at Boundless. I think we started growing our APAC community before we even started hosting events in the US, etc., because it's a fundamentally important part of global expansion. But this has been awesome. I'm just gonna throw it out there if you guys have any closing thoughts, because I know we're at time, but I feel like we could be talking about users and incentives and marketing all day. But Ashwath, any closing thoughts?
I think if there's one thing you guys take away from this, it's that no amount of marketing or strategy is going to take away from a bad product. So the first thing to get in line is you're solving a real use case for people, and you have something that is compelling enough that everyone wants to use, and that's when it becomes effective to turn on things like incentives and to build attention around your product. But if you do that with, quite honestly, a shitty product, then yeah, it's going to lead nowhere. It's just going to be a huge burn of your project or your company's resources. So I think a lot of people think of GTM marketing as an afterthought. It's not an afterthought, but it definitely is an ancillary function around product building. And so you focus on the product first. Good GTM and marketing can almost come very easily if you have something that people already want to use.
Thank you, Ashwath. Kunal?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just did a workshop before coming here, and my first slide during that workshop, it was around GTM, was if you don't have a good product, marketeer's life will be miserable. So,
Leave the company.
So I think the best products would always have marketing embedded in it from day one. And there are enough examples in the space where builders understand what marketing is, and they embed that marketing bit in, as well as growth flywheel in the product from day one. To an extent, I think there are three things matter a lot, which I keep on repeating to everyone. One, if you are building in crypto, your founder's presence on whatever social media platforms are there matter a lot, especially CT. Second, you need to align yourself with an ecosystem, because that will give you a share of cult that those ecosystems have. In Wormhole's case, it was Solana prior. In our case, it has been Base. And third is, if your product is good enough, there will be enough KOL talking about your product organically. And if you are a team who do not have these three things, you should try to align for these three things. Eventually, that is, if there is a one message I want you to take away from this, is this, like, align for these three things and, go from here. And I think if you are someone who is a solo builder and you do not know that how do I do marketing and all, I would say just build on Base, do a mini app, you have a ready-made user base available there, talk into a bunch of groups that exist, that becomes your GTM eventually. So yeah, I think this is in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool that we made it through 30 minutes of this panel without using the word KOL till now. Rachit, any?
Well, I mean, Kunal is a KOL.
Yeah, Kunal just, yeah.
Kashvi is also a KOL.
I'm really not a KOL.
You used to tweet so much, Kashvi, you should get back to it.
For me, Rachit is the KOL.
Rachit is the ultimate. He's the favorite KOL's favorite KOL.
All right, my final takeaway. I think obviously, the product stuff is there. But one thing that marketers should also focus on is one thing that marketers should also focus on is collecting user feedback. I feel like a lot of teams, traditionally have, they have separate product teams. I think the marketing team should work really closely with the product team and understand what is good feedback, what is bad feedback, what are things that we're indexing on. The other advice I have for you, if you're, if you're also a marketer, I think you should also spend time understanding general crypto sentiment. If you have a crypto native products like ours, Wormhole, I spend a lot of my time trying to understand where the market is going, and a lot of marketers will play push and pull based on if sentiment is bullish or bearish. You'll probably see less tweets coming out when sentiment is bearish versus when it's bullish. The third thing that I'll really, really focus on and index on is the fact that if you're a marketer, social media is not your only channel, right? There are events, there are community, there's so many different things, there's PR, there's so many different pillars to marketing. I think as an industry, we've come back to Twitter and shit posting as like the North Star. It's not. Your North Star is what you actually want, and then you reverse engineer accordingly. Like if you're working with a lot of institutional partners like we do at Wormhole, you want a good level of PR where if someone Googles you, like BlackRock's not going to search you on Twitter, they're going to search you on Google, right? You want to focus on a good PR strategy where you pop up on the news a lot. If you have a community in Korea, for instance, you want to do events in Korea so that you can actually talk to those people there, right? I think marketers have always indexed themselves towards social media, and it's a lot bigger than what it actually is. And that's something that I'd urge all of you guys to focus on as well.
GTM, as you guys know, is a very multifaceted job. There's a lot that comes under it. I feel like we only touched on 20% of what a full GTM strategy is, but you guys should follow Rachit, Ashwath, and Kunal on their personal channels.
What are your final thoughts? I'm very
What?
curious. What are your final thoughts? Come on, give us some takeaways.
My final thoughts are that you need a holistic strategy and a product that actually works in order to even have a GTM overlay, is what we're calling it. A lot of projects in crypto end up inflating their marketing strategies to go to I think it's just they're not doing it the right way, but I think conversations like this are increasing the amount of just like knowledge available in the market of what you could potentially be doing, because it's tempting to take the shortcuts, but it's always better to play for the long run.
Yeah, one thing that I really appreciate about the Boundless team is the way that they've integrated a mascot into their GTM strategy. Like again, that's one thing that Kashvi doesn't like. She talks a lot about it on Twitter, but that's also a part of what a marketer should do, right? Like branding is an important part. Like go beyond what social media is and try to understand what you're trying to do and how that gets you there, is my final thought to you guys.
I actually get most of my marketing inspo from Pinterest, Substack, and Instagram, which are absolutely non-crypto channels. So I implore everyone to go beyond crypto Twitter and beyond LinkedIn and beyond this bubble almost that we're all in, because there's so much to learn from other successful brands and bring to our industry. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you to our panelists. Please follow them, stay in touch with them, and keep up with their companies. Thank you.